Serapis in God's name I am, calling for purity's rate to expand, imploring that shadows no longer adhere, so longing for purity now to appear. My mind purify of its fleeting impression, my feelings release of all impure direction. Let memory retain the immaculate concept and treasure the pearl of the Holy Christ precept. O souvenir of radiant wonder, let my mind on thee now ponder. Christ's discrimination sunder all that's less than God's success. Cut me free from all deception, fix my mind on pure perception. Hear, O thou, my invocation, my Christ self to manifest. O flame of cosmic purity, from Luxor blaze through me. Completely clear all shadowed weights, ascend me now to thee. Beloved Serapis, in God's name I am, calling for purity's ray to expand, imploring that shadows no longer adhere, so longing for purity now to appear. My mind purify of its fleeting impression, my feelings release of all impure direction. Let memory retain the immaculate concept and treasure the pearl of the Holy Christ precept. O souvenir of radiant wonder, let my mind on thee now ponder. Christ's discrimination sunder all that's less than God's success. Cut me free from all deception, fix my mind on pure perception. Hear, O thou, my invocation, my Christ self to manifest. O flame of cosmic purity, from Luxor blaze through me. Completely clear all shadowed weights, ascend me now to thee. And in full faith I consciously accept this manifest, manifest, manifest. And in full faith I consciously accept this manifest, manifest, manifest. And in full faith I consciously accept this manifest, manifest, manifest. Right here and now with full power, eternally sustained, all powerfully active, ever expanding in world enfolding until all are wholly ascended in the light and free. Beloved I am, beloved I am, beloved I am.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. This is an evening of great joy in which we celebrate the ascension of our beloved Ruth Edna Farnam. We welcome all of you who are connected to our patch to attend this service this evening. It is a very joyous service and a wondrous peace and transformation that we know in the heart of our beloved Ruth. We are here to reminisce of all that we have experienced with her in many, many years. We are here to sing praises to her and to realize that the ascension process began yesterday, and the opening of the doors of heaven to her were made manifest. The action of her ascension is one that is taking place gradually and beautifully, as she is still partially among us and partially in the fullness of her I Am presence. So in gratitude for the light that she has brought to us all of these years, let us give our fiats and sing, I Am Light.
Transmuting it
Thank you. Please be seated. It is a joyous occasion when we commune with one whom we know and have known for so long, and to know that the hour of the victory of the Ascension is upon her. So we sing unto the Lord a new song. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. In the name of the I am that I am, and by the love of the light which lighteth every man and woman that cometh into the world, we come before thy throne, O God, to give glory and praise for thy will, thy all-encompassing love, thy action here below as above, fulfilling cosmic law and cosmic purpose within each heart. Our Father who art in heaven, we pray for the souls who come together this day in heaven and on earth to salute the glory of the risen Christ in our beloved Ruth Edna Farnam and all who follow her in the regeneration. May light and love increase in all hearts because thy love is fulfilled in her this day. We pray for all who mourn that they might be comforted. We pray that the Holy Comforter might be that Spirit of living truth that defines and redefines individual destiny. And we pray for understanding that we might share and know thy plan for each one. In the name of the Father, of the Mother, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, we thank thee, O God, for thy infinite mercy unto all. Amen. Let us sing with Mark Prophet, Come, Blessed Light. Song number 173. Please stand.
I hum a sacred tone to thee, beloved God so fair. I see thy light descending through the hallowed air. The radiance of thy shining now falls like gentle rain. Oh no, my heart is pining to be thy son again. Blessed light, never failing bright, come, blessed love, stream forth tonight, always enfold me, by grace now hold me, keep me close to thee, by obedience free. Come, blessed light, come. Come and sing a song to me, O great Redeemer mine. Hum an anthem to the free, the clasp of arms divine. Now draw me near, by love enfold my being to thy own, thy life renewed within me, for error does atone. Come, blessed light, never failing bright. Come, blessed love, stream forth tonight, always enfold me. By God's grace now hold me, keep me close to thee, in obedience free. Come, blessed light, come. The rainbow of thy promise now gleams upon the air. My life is lifted into light, I see thee everywhere. No shadow closes round me, for everywhere I go, thy presence walks within me, making me to know and be that I am always one with thee. Come, blessed light, never failing bright. Come, blessed love, stream forth tonight, always enfold me. By grace now hold me, keep me close to thee, in obedience free. Come, blessed light, come.
Seated. Psalm 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in, from this time forth, and even forevermore. Let us sing number 223A. Please focus on the flame within your heart, the threefold flame, and the great magnet of the heart of Ruth Farnam, of her great love for beloved Mark Prophet especially, for all souls on the path and all people of the world.
Of the nation, Lord of heaven's third ray, descend within upon us, our love, divine love. Behold, angels of living flames of love, let love be magnified, let love be magnified by holy angels and saints above, by holy angels and saints above. Oh, lovely ones, let love be magnified. Beloved, all of the nation, let love be the dividing of the way, the drawing forth of the Holy Spirit, the Lord Mahachohan this day. Come, beautiful pole of the nation. Oh love, oh beloved, oh love, oh beloved, let love be the dividing of the way, let love be the dividing of the way. Come, legions of far-off worlds, come, knights of old, keeping the torch of love, keeping the living flames of love, love from the living Christ above, love for the things of God, the ways of God, the path of God, for hearts in love, the newborn babe, to heal the flaws of earth, to be master of the day, to behold, to ever say, take my hand, lead me on, lovely Paul of the nation, oh love, oh beloved, let love be magnified. Oh love, oh beloved, let love be magnified. Let love be magnified. Goddess of liberty, come, come with the fire, the rose pink, the ruby ray. Come with the purging of ruby fire, with undulations of love's great calm. Restore divine memory, tablets of man, ancient records of moon, the glory of the elder days of art. Divine Mother of ancient Lemuria, we salute thee. The children of the motherland salute thee. Beloved home of a nation, Lord of heaven's third reign, part the veil, part the veil, part the
Thank you. Please be seated. Friends of Ruth Farnam are here to testify of their love for her and their experiences with her. Won't you come forward, Reverend Barrick?
Ruth cherished life. And even through the most difficult hardships in her life, she held an unwavering gratitude for Mother, Mark, Lanello, and the Masters. Ruth was one of my mentors when I first came on staff at La Tourelle over 22 years ago. Though she had multifaceted talents, Ruth did the humble office work of handling the mail. Of course, it was a big job, but she did it very lovingly, very diligently. She always had stacks of work before her, and she worked very hard with great concentration and diligence. I was an exuberant young novice at the time, who she could see needed a bit of sound advice, so she spared her own personal time out of her busy day to give me instruction and spend time with me. Ruth was always very focused on her work. She did not chit-chat, and so the time that she poured into me personally was an investment of her love and her kindness for me personally. And I loved it when she would share intimate accounts of her personal path and her experiences with Mother and Mark. There were years at a time when I did not see Ruth very much. She was in Colorado and I was at the headquarters. Yet whenever we would get back together, we were like old friends. Ruth led what outwardly could be considered a very lonely life. She was often by herself in different places. She had had 17 different surgeries that were very challenging and very difficult for her personally. Yet, she was never alone because she's led such a deep, spiritually rich inner life. Though Ruth was separated from Mother in physical location, Ruth always felt very close to Mother and the Masters, and of course to Mark. Ruth often commented to me about how she would be with Mother in her dreams. Right before her stroke, just a few months ago, Ruth shared with me a dream she did not fully understand at the time. She and Mother were together, and Mother was wearing a garment that appeared white at a distance, but close up, that garment had some rough, tattered brown areas. After some time walking and talking together, Ruth noticed the garment became completely white. I realize today that Mother, as Ruth's beloved guru, was showing to Ruth how her garment was not yet all white, and that in a little while it would be transformed into a glistening white Ascension garment. Here's just a little bit of the wisdom of Ruth. In 1991, when she was 87 years old, she wrote the following: Rules for a Happy Marriage by Grandma Ruth. Don't fuss at the breakfast table. It will ruin the day. Don't argue in public. Gossips will spread the news. Don't fight at bedtime. You'll spend a sleepless night. In other words, don't quarrel. Love is the key. Understanding and patience solve the problem. May your home be blessed by the Ascended Masters all your lives. Now Ruth, as an Ascended Lady Master herself, can personally bless the homes and lives of those of us she knew and those of you who are just getting to know her tonight. Thank you, Ruth. And in closing, I know there is one message she would like to share with everyone, and she has given that to me many, many times over the years, which is, I love you.
Beloved Mother, beloved family, and friends of Ruth Farnam, before sharing some of my experience with Ruth, I know Ruth, her family, her son Jack, and daughter-in-law Nina would want to express their gratitude to you, Mother, to Mark Lanello, for your support, your guidance and love and friendship, to Reverend Carl Showalter for praying with her and nurturing her. To George Sanborn, for being her companion and friend, for taking her shopping, sharing meals with her. To all her family and friends who served with her, from her hairdresser in Wanda's Beauty Shop in Livingston, to those who took her mail, read to her, took her favorite blue cheese salad dressing from the Yellowstone Inn that she loved so much, to those who visited her, those who prayed with her and for her, and for those who cared for her at the Livingston Hospital and the Livingston Convalescent Center. First and foremost, Ruth Farnam was my friend. We lived together in staff housing in Golden Age Village. When her health required professional care, she moved to the Livingston Convalescent Center. Ruth always had a way of making light of the challenges of her life. I remember when I visited her at the Convalescent Center, it was dinner time and she was sitting with 3 other residents, and I saw these massive bruises on her arms. And I was very concerned. In all seriousness, I said, "Ruth, how did you get all those bruises?" Without missing a beat, she said, "Oh, didn't you know they beat you here?" She just deflected my concern and seriousness, told me what happened when people take blood thinners. She also had a very keen sense of order and organization. She was fastidious about her paperwork. She often referred to herself as Fussy Farnam. She had everything labeled from the contents, even to the contents of her suitcase, such as large suitcase, this is in her handwriting, soap, lipstick, makeup, lipsticks, compacts, 2 VO, 5 shampoo, 2 mouthwashes, 3 hair set lotion, and on and on. Often Teresa McNicholas and Eileen Connors and others would ask me how Ruth was doing, and I would tell them, Ruth is doing great. She's still working on organizing the Livingston Convalescent Center. And this is an example of her efforts. Ruth wrote the administration and the dietitian many times, offering suggestions on how they could save money in their meal planning. Being wasteful was an affront to Ruth because wastefulness is an affront to the masters. She was very conscientious about following the law with the lowercase l and the uppercase L. Ruth loved certain foods, especially lamb chops and sweets. She tried to eat right, especially when we got the macrobiotic diet, but she definitely had food likes and dislikes. Mother, she was very happy when you told her at one of her birthday dinners, when you celebrated with her, that she could eat anything she wanted. Ruth would get her hair washed, set, and styled at Wanda's Beauty Shop because they had the only beautician that could get her front wave in right. So yesterday, when I was driving to the florist in Livingston, I heard this small voice say, "Go to Wanda's Beauty Shop and tell them that Ruth passed on." Well, I did it without questioning. I walked into the beauty shop and I asked for Ruth's hairdresser. And I asked to speak to her, and 2 ladies came out, Cheryl, the owner, and her hairdresser, and Carol, the past owner. They both expressed their appreciation for Ruth, and they kept saying what a neat lady she was, and that she had such a fine mind. And when Carol said that Ruth was a very special lady, I sensed that the God presence in Ruth had reached and touched the God presence in these 2 ladies. And I believe this was Ruth and is Ruth's greatest joy in life, for the Christ in her to make contact with the Christ in others. And she did this all the time that I knew her. It did not matter if it was a hairdresser, a keeper of the flame, family member, or someone she had just met. She did not forget birthdays nor letters to be answered. She stuck these wonderful stickers of elementals and angels and seasonal stickers on the envelopes. She gave of herself totally because first and foremost, she was friends with Jesus. And this friendship was the foundation of her friendship with me and with every part of life she so lovingly touched. I had the honor and experience to witness Ruth's love for Jesus. We were having dinner at the Convalescent Center front room. There was a piano in the room, and I asked Ruth if she'd ever played the piano, because I knew she was a music teacher and she did give piano lessons. She said no, but she played the piano in the cafeteria. She then asked me if I would take her to the cafeteria, to the piano in the cafeteria, which I did, and she played a hymn to Jesus. I don't remember the name, but I knew it was a hymn to him. The room was literally filled with the presence of Jesus, and tears came to my eyes. Ruth was giving everything she had, and she was fully enveloped in the love of and for the Master Jesus as she played. She really was in another dimension. Later, she told me it took tremendous effort for her to play. She had to use all of her energy to focus and concentrate to move her fingers to get to the right keys. It didn't dawn on me then that it took that much effort, because as she was playing, it just seemed effortless of what she was doing. As I said earlier, Ruth did not forget birthdays, and this is one of the birthday cards she gave me. And I'd just like to read inside of it. Dear Rose, sorry I can't give you anything except what that song says. I can't give you anything but love, baby. And then she goes on, but I want to read that to you. And inside this card, she put a quotation of Buddha, and it reads, "Wisdom of the inner self. Good health is the most valued possession. Peace is the most precious wealth. Faith is the best friend. Realization of oneness with God bestows supreme bliss." Our dear friend Ruth, we want to thank you for holding the balance for us and the planet, for your great wisdom, your love, and friendship. You are an exemplar of the Ruby Ray Cross of service, sacrifice, surrender, and selflessness. We love you, Ruth. Excelsior!
Good evening, everyone, Mother. My remarks are short. I loved Ruth, she loved me, she loved everyone. And this is something she taught me a lot about when I served at La Tourelle with her, 2 different periods of time. And she would be up in her little room, and whenever anyone had a problem or a concern, they would go up to Ruth's room and talk with her. And she was that mother flame, which she held after Mother moved out to California. She held that flame at La Tourelle. I remember Ruth for her courage through the many, many operations that she had. And she never complained about the operations. Sometimes she would say things privately to me as a minister, but she didn't complain to other people about them. And she always had a joy flame and an expectation that something wonderful would happen. A humorous thing is that Ruth never had a problem with money. For one thing, she tithed, but apart from that ongoing giving of what is God's due, she had this little humorous thing that she would do. She would always say to me, "Marilyn, I'm expecting a check." I'd say, "Oh, somebody's sending you something?" And she'd say, "Well, I don't know who it is yet, but I'm expecting a check." And she would get one from the most strange places and people that she had forgotten about, or relatives that she hadn't heard from, or whatever. she seemed to be able to simply precipitate the abundance that she needed. I remember, too, at the home where she was after she retired and went into the home in Colorado Springs, the people over there loved her, and she gave her love there very, very freely, just as she has always. And she was very popular among the residents. She did play the piano a lot there for them, and they would listen to her, and some of them would sing. And so I haven't had as much opportunity to be with Ruth in recent years, but I would stop by and see her every now and then. And it was always as though you just picked up the friendship again, because she was a friend to all. She really was a friend to the messengers, Mother and Mark, from the word go. I never heard her say an unkind word about either one of them, and she treasured their presence in the earth and in heaven. She treasured her friendship with them, and she believed wholeheartedly, 100%, that we were all going to go home to God, and a lot of that was going to be due to the messengers being here. And so I just want to say to Ruth, I'm grateful for your friendship, for your love, for your faith, your courage, and for your devotion to the masters and to the messengers.
Good evening, Mother and community and friends of Ruth Farnam. I would like to witness to you about my experience with beloved Ruth Farnam and about the love the masters have for each one of us. When I first came on staff, I was assigned to work in food processing. One day, a few friends came over to talk with me. We began to discuss ways that would help people to have the vision of staff life. I remember very clearly saying to my friends, if only new staff had the opportunity to be with the elders of the church, to hear their stories, their trials of being a staff member, the initiations they have been through, and how staff life has been for them, maybe that would give them the understanding of what it means to be a Chila on staff. About 9 months later, I was transferred to North Ranch, where I soon began taking care of Ruth Farnam. She lived in Golden Age Village. I would go to her house to cook a meal and give her whatever care she needed. Sometimes when I went to Ruth's home, she would decide she wanted to go to town. She loved to get out and do things, even though she was pretty much confined to a wheelchair. She could only walk short distances. I would help her into the car and off we would go. I can remember very clearly that we would start doing our traveling protection. Then I would expect to continue the rest of the trip into town doing other decrees. But Ruth would immediately stop and begin telling stories about her experiences with Mark Prophet, Mother, and her life on staff in the early days of the church. These stories were so wonderful. I remember feeling like a little child as she would tell them. And some of these were so unbelievable that we would both begin to laugh. I can remember when she would talk about Mark, I had this strong feeling that he was sitting between us in the car, laughing right along with us. Ruth would share with me some of the initiations she had with Mark. For example, at one conference, Ruth was sitting in the front row. Mark turned to her from the altar and in front of all the people asked her a question. Ruth did not know the answer, so she sheepishly said, "I don't know." At that, Mark said, "Oh, Ruth, you don't know anything." Ruth went on to tell me that most people would have been offended by this test, but she realized that her soul needed this chastisement. There was another time when she was in a staff meeting with Mark. For some reason, she was disciplined in the staff meeting. There were two sisters that were also on staff and at the staff meeting. They were so offended that Mark embarrassed Ruth in front of the whole staff that they both left staff. Well, Ruth was not moved by this discipline either and steadfastly remained on staff. However, she wanted to make sure these two sisters knew that she was still a member of the staff and doing well. So when she would send out the conference flyers, she made sure to include a little note to the sisters telling them how well things were going for her on staff. Ruth knew that these initiations were tests of humility. It seemed to be a theme that ran through many of her tests. Mark had told her that in a previous embodiment, she was an oracle at Delphi and became too big for her britches. Ruth was definitely learning humility. She was not afraid to tell me her trials, even though they were sometimes somewhat embarrassing. There was a time that I couldn't wait to get to Ruth's house so I could hear stories about Mark and Ruth's experiences on staff. And Ruth loved a captive audience. She loved to share how wonderful Mark was to be with. After one time of being together with Ruth, my thoughts went back to the day in food processing when I was talking to my friends about how special it would be if new staff members could spend time with the elders who had been through their tests and trials as chelas. It was such a humbling experience to realize that what I had asked for several years ago came to happen. God and the Masters allowed me to spend time with beloved Ruth, an elder of the church, to learn what chelaship is like and what it was to be in the presence of Mark in the early days of the church. I began to feel that Ruth was helping me more than I was helping her. Beloved Ruth, thank you for all the ways you helped me. I am eternally grateful for your love and telling me of your adventures of chelaship with Mark. My soul was so in need to have this knowledge and understanding to help me to be a better chela on the path. And most of all, thank you for being my friend and for your loving, kind heart you have imparted to me and to all. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Beloved mother and friends, I had the privilege of spending a short time helping Ruth, and I count it as one great blessing in my life. Ruth had a very fiery heart, overflowing with love, and she had great concern for the children of the world, and she would watch the programs that were on TV for the children, and then she would write these fiery letters to the station and tell them to get those things off in there. And then, if there was a good program, she would also let them know that that was a good program. I didn't know her when she served with Mark and Mother in the early years or her prime years. I only knew her when she was in her 90s, but she was eternally young. And due to her physical condition, there are many, many things that she couldn't do that she really wanted to do. And so I witnessed many things that in the eyes of the world, they would be small and insignificant. But is anything small or insignificant when you have fire in your heart and a divine love that impregnates all that one does? And that's what she did. And somebody was telling about the envelopes with all these little stickers on. And I had seen envelopes with stickers on before, but there was something about that envelope with Ruth stickers that had a different effect on me, and it did to other people too. No matter how heavily burdened the day was, a smile came to your lips, there was joy in your heart, and there was sunshine in your heart. And I think that was because as she lovingly stuck these little stickers on, the joy and the love radiated from her right into the stickers. And I'm sure everyone along the way that as it went through United States had that same experience as I did. When I took her to the doctor or to the hairdresser, and I deeply appreciated Ruth as being an older person and being in pain all the time, keeping her body temple up and making it worthy of the God within. So whenever we went, we always went out to eat. And when she would go in the washroom, to wash her hands, she always took that towel and devotedly cleaned the sink area and made it ready for another Christ and another person that went there. Last night, as I was thinking of this, I asked Lanello what he would witness about Ruth. And I began to look in some pearls, but always what came to my mind was his book, Cosmic Consciousness. And for some reason, I was resisting that a little bit, but then finally I took it, and I found the chapter 5, part 2. Now, I don't have time to read it because we do have limited time here, but you might like to read that. And what happened there in that chapter is that Mark told about being a little a shepherd boy in the Middle East, and he did. He had an act of honesty and a great act of love. And as a result of that episode, it was recorded in the Akashic Records, and there was the flame of the Holy Spirit that was anchored there because love was born and kindled in the hearts of one and a few. And Mark said, as he looks down now through the centuries and the years, he sees that everyone that travels that path in that area has something good happen to them. It says, I note that with joy that all who have passed the way have been kindled with love and concern for their fellow men. And all the events that flow from the beginning have turned the tide in many souls and many hearts. And some who have come are weary, and some who have come are vicious and dark. As they approach the place where the virtue is enshrined, find lofty thoughts, aspirations, and concern for humanity beginning to dawn upon the consciousness. They are refreshed in a spiritual way, and they do not leave the place without receiving, in some measure, transforming energies which love does impart. And so he continues, after I'm leaving some of this out, but he said, I have recounted this to you that you may go and do likewise, that you might render service, knowing that every act that is selfless is a seed that is planted in the soul of a planet, and that seed will mature and wax strong and blossom as a floral adornment for those who come after. And all who pass in the way where you walk, where you have left the record of selflessness, will likewise be impelled to perpetuate that spiral which you have initiated. And by, the reinforcement of virtue by successive acts, multiplied by other acts, builds a compelling momentum for love as a foundation of a new civilization, a new age, and a new hierarchy. And I do believe that that's what Lynella wanted to witness in Ruth, because that's what she did. And so I want to thank you, Ruth, for walking with me, for walking the path with us, and showing us the way of selfless love, and for touching the lives of so many, and now intensifying all that you have ever done on earth and more.
Hildegard.
Beloved Mother, beloved friends of Ruth, it was my great joy to be with Ruth for 3 years, from April 1990 till April 1993. And my assignment was to cook lunch for her and take care of all of her needs. And so at that time, we were very strictly into macrobiotics, and so I started cooking macrobiotic meals for her. And Ruth would not tell me anything. She just ate them. So then slowly we were going to town, and she loved to go to restaurants. And then I found out that she actually was not that fond of macrobiotic meals. So we went shopping for food she liked at that point. And one thing, she always liked the waitress. And she loved going to the same restaurant, and the waitress was actually her friend. And she became very personal and would even, tell her family stories and even counsel the waitress. She would even have her sit at the table with her to talk to her. Every time I came, Ruth was always very happy and very cheerful, and we had many, many talks together. And she would always do her work, and I prepare the meals. She did a lot of letter writing, and I did bring quite a few because they are so special. I just want to show you how she decorated. And she was a musician, so she would actually put the song in notes on the letters with the birds. And this is a special one, tattering, which I didn't even know. She did that herself. She did tattering when she was younger. Very intricate work on the little handkerchief. There's a very special one. She would send little notes for special occasions. This was a Valentine's note. She sends a little picture, and this is Ruth Farnam. That's a little bear, and she puts her initials in it. That's from Ruth to me. And then she sends me this little Valentine's card, which is very cute. She says, to Hildegard from Grandma Ruth. So here just a few more. Birthdays are very special. So there's many, many pictures. Here's another one, lots of hugs and kisses. Another one. So they're very special. Okay, Ruth loved to go to services, so we would come, and she did not want to miss any dictation, no matter how late it was. And so we had to go home late at night, and she was concerned that I might go to sleep at the wheel. So she would tell stories about Mark, and she knew I'd be awake, and they were totally wonderful, like everyone else has heard. Like Ruth always liked to dress up. She'd be in the color of the day, and they were always beautiful colors. Even if her dresses were many years old, they always looked beautiful. But it was her love in her dress. And she said she was never dressed unless she had her earrings on. So they had to match. They were not very expensive, but they were always beautiful. And she loved to have her photos taken. So she even scheduled it that we both went to have a special photographer take our pictures. And she loved to send these photos to all her friends. Okay, I would just like one of these birthday cards, the last one she sent to me, she sends a little message in it, and she said, "A diamond is a chunk of coal that made good under pressure." So she was so I loved Ruth very much. She was very precious, and she was so loving. And it was just wonderful to spend so much time with her. And I love her very much.
Catherine. Catherine Fox.
Good evening. I'm actually reading this for my husband, John Fox, who is working out tonight. So these are his words. When I first arrived on staff in 1971 at La Tourelle in Colorado Springs, I was assigned to the mailroom in the basement. Ruth Farnam was my first boss. It was a tiny room where 4 people worked on the daily mails and the upkeep of the records. Alex Reichart sat opposite Ruth and worked on records for Keepers of the Flame lessons. I had a desk in the middle facing the wall. It was a daily beehive of activity. Every morning, Mark Prophett came to visit us, and Ruth would always have his personal mail ready for him. Mark would often open the letters while in the room, and if it was apropos, would read aloud their contents. We all felt somewhat special to share in his private mail. My fondest memories of Ruth involved our working together in that mailroom. Back then, we didn't have computers or photocopying machines. Everybody who was a member of our church had all of his or her pertinent information written on index cards that we filed alphabetically in shoe boxes. Ruth kept all of the shoebox files under lock and key under her desk. Every morning, she would bring all the shoeboxes out for us to use. I believe Alex had his own set for Keepers of the Flame lessons. Those images still bring a chuckle and a smile to me to this day. Ruth was very loving, kind, and patient. During those early times at La Tourelle, I discovered Wagner and his magnificent music. I received a cassette deck with speakers as a Christmas present from my family back in Buffalo, New York. Of course, I bought the system into the mailroom every day and would play my favorite Wagner passages for all to hear. I'm sure Ruth was very pleased to see me getting so involved with classical music, since she knew I had been recently rescued from my bohemian 60s hippie lifestyle. She would gently remind me not to play the music too often, as it would interfere with my work. Being in my early 20s, I always regarded Ruth as being very wise and would attentively listen to her loving counsel. Over the years, I haven't seen much of Ruth, but we would always exchange Christmas letters every year. We would also send her pictures of our growing family. Ruth very much appreciated our personal contact with her. And I just wanted to add one little sidelight that back at La Tourelle, there was this one bathroom. It was extremely gorgeous, but the colors were black and orange. And it must have cost a lot of money, otherwise the bathroom probably would have been redone. But back then, when you used a paper towel or whatever to wipe your hands, we wiped our hands, and you wiped the sink off so that it was ready for the next person to use it. So that just reminded me when you said when Ruth washed her hands that she wiped the sink. To this day, I still wipe all the sinks. We love you, Ruth. My wife, Catherine, and I count it truly a blessing to know you as one of our dearest friends and mentors on the path of life. Thank you.
I served at La Tourelle with Ruth Farnam. I'd like to say that Ruth was a grand lady, excuse me, and she was a lady of uncommon integrity and character. And not all of you really know Ruth because she's been tucked away for a while. Of course, she's 90-some years old, so she hasn't been as active. But Ruth was a tall woman. She must be 5'10", and she's a lady of the old school. She was a very proper lady. And when you called up to visit Ruth, you know, you made an appointment, and you went to visit her. And it was a formal visit, but not in a stuffy sense, but in the sense that it was a gracious visit. And she drove a 1955 Nash at La Tourelle. This was a classic car, a two-tone green Nash. Everything about her was special. And she was actually called out of retirement at La Tourelle to run the teaching center. And she was very efficient. Everything went well. Everybody paid their bills. Everything got on track. I believe she was the bursar of England at one point, if I remember right. So she did have her facts and figures down. And once when Mother visited, we were kind of a group of country bumpkins because we'd really never been around Mother, the people at the teaching center. And after that visit, we didn't really do that well in Mother's presence. We actually didn't even stand when she came in the room, which is, we just didn't know. But what Ruth did is she had us, she instituted an etiquette training program, including table manners. And we all sat, La Tourelle had a beautiful dining room. We all sat around the dining room, and we would pass things, and we would actually practice proper table manners. When ladies entered the room, we would stand. And it was wonderful training, and this is the way people in the early part of the century lived. And this is something I think we've forgotten and that Ruth embodied. She always embodied that proper etiquette, and you know, in one sense too, her aura would hold everybody together. It held La Tourelle together. I saw her quite a bit in Livingston at the home, and you know, a nursing home's a rough place. You know, people are in their waning years, and Ruth was just a pillar of strength there. You know, one time I was there, and a gal named Dolly came by, and Dolly was kind of had problems, you know, and she would somewhat bother people, and you know, she'd come over and talk, and Ruth just said, "I love you, Dolly. I just love you, Dolly," and Dolly just kind of waved and went away, and Ruth said, "I just tell her I love her," and you know that she's just content with that. And that was the essence of Ruth, holding things together with her very aura and her strength. She always loved to be at services. You know, for those of us at the teaching center, sometimes in the winter it's cold, people don't always show up. And it was so neat sometimes to be Ruth on the piano and I would lead the service and, you know, I'd sing away. And, you know, the angels loved it. And But that's the way she was. She was there, and she would play the piano at the Sunday services at La Tourelle, and La Tourelle was just a beautiful focus, and it was almost as if the focus and Ruth went together. It was a magnificent architecture, and I'm just so grateful that Ruth was there, and that I was able to be there. One thing that Ruth did is every story she gave to you had a message, and she had a lot, you know, she would help you with your themes, and she had things that she based her life on the teachings. And it was so special, her relationship with Mother and Mark. And so some of the things that I heard a lot, she would always say, it's not what comes to you, it's how you handle it that matters. Because she was counseling all of us all the time. Also, she said, in dealing with people, if you lose your harmony, you are wrong, even if you were right to begin with. And it was very important to her for each of us to keep our harmony. And also, if God gives you a test, he also gives you the means to pass it. I'd like to share one thing. After Ruth had her, before she had her stroke at the teaching center, kind of reminiscing, at the Livingston Convalescent Home, I visited her around Christmas, and she was sharing with me how one of the ladies that we knew from La Tourelle had gone on and married a person, and actually she'd kind of gone astray. She had brought her husband into the teachings, and he had, been disappointed in the marriage and everything that happened, and kind of fallen away. And Ruth had kept contact with this person, and actually this person re-entered the teachings and got their spiritual life together. And this is while Ruth is in her 90s, that she was able to do this and able to do it mainly through correspondence. And also, after she had her stroke, she wasn't able to talk, but she understood everything, and she was right there with you. I never felt separated from her at all. But one day I was, I'm talking to her and kind of babbling. What do you say to somebody that's not talking back? And I kind of felt silly, And it was because I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing. And so I was saying, I know it's hard on you that you can't talk and this and that. And then when I got up to leave, and I don't know if it was from the etheric or that she actually said it, and I felt she actually said it. She said, "Goodbye, Dale." And I was astounded. But the next visit, I tuned into what actually I was supposed to be doing. Instead of making small talk, I just started making calls. And as I made calls, she very much relaxed, and that's where the soul contact was, in making those calls. And I think that's the one thing she would have me share with you tonight, was her spirituality and her devotion to the teachings, and that those teachings work. And so then after that, when I went to visit, I would just make constant calls in a low voice, and once in a while be surprised by somebody buzzing in to do something in the room, but I wasn't doing it loudly. It was very, very discreet, and they didn't mind. But and that's what really that's what put our hearts at peace. And the last time I saw her, it was actually this week, and I was so comforted and so peaceful in her presence. And of course, she wasn't very responsive, but it was, again, Ruth was there, and her presence was there, and her strength, and all the things she stood for so strongly. So I'm very grateful. I'm very happy for Ruth.
Good evening, Mother. Good evening, friends of Ruth. I have my testimonial and also one from Celeste Lasater, who knew Ruth very well but couldn't be here. I met Ruth Farnam about 3 years ago when she came to a service in King Arthur's Court. After the evening service, someone asked me to take a dinner over to the court and give it to a woman in a wheelchair. When I got to the court, Ruth graciously invited me to join her. I found out she had been a teacher for many years, and so we sat and talked about teaching for about an hour, because I am also a teacher. After that, I used to visit Ruth in Glastonbury, and then after she had health problems in the Livingston Convalescent Home. Ruth was always gracious and kind, dressed nicely, and wore her pearl necklace. She told lots of stories about Mark, Prophet, and Mother, and said that Mother had asked her to write her memoirs, which she did. Ruth told me that she loved children, and she still had one more gift that she would like to give our school. She wanted to teach the teachers how to do handwriting analysis. She had used handwriting analysis when she had been a teacher, and she had seen how it had helped her students. By watching a child's handwriting, a teacher can tell not only when something is bothering the child, but also sometimes what the problem is. Ruth always had a story to prove her point. She also had proof that by correcting the formation of the handwriting, the child could correct the negative tendency in himself or herself. Her most dramatic story about this was about a teenage boy who was always getting in trouble back in the days when she was at the orphanage. His handwriting showed that he always wanted things to come his way. One day he was caught stealing. In fact, he was caught a lot, but this one day was the last straw, and he was about to be expelled from school. Ruth intervened, and she taught him to change his handwriting. She said, "Your life will be better when you learn to give of yourself and be grateful for what you have." You probably won't remember the lady who told you this, but I hope you remember what she said. Years later, years after the boy had finished college, Ruth received a phone call. The boy was now a man, and he said, "Yes, I remember the lady who helped me, and I wanted her to know that I am now a dentist. I also wanted to tell you that I spend every Saturday over at the military hospital giving free dental care to the children." So he learned his lesson. Ruth had wanted to give her handwriting analysis classes to a group of teachers, but that never worked out. By the time we could get it organized, Ruth's vision was so bad that she could no longer read regular-sized handwriting. Also, by that time, she had moved to the convalescent home. However, such trifles did not stop Ruth. She arranged to use a community room at the convalescent center where she could sit in her wheelchair. She rewrote her lessons with a dark marker and large strokes so that she could see the letters. Some evenings I was her only student, and sometimes we were joined by Nadine Krosky or by Susan Norris. She was very considerate and decided to keep her lessons simple and uncomplicated. The lessons were sporadic since she sometimes had physical complications and had to go across the street to the hospital. We had one more lesson to go when she had a serious stroke and was paralyzed and couldn't speak. She had told me that she wanted me to have all her books and materials so I could bring this technique to the school. I'll have to admit that I really never wanted that last lesson to come because I knew that she looked forward to it and maybe she would stay a little longer so she could finish it. I selfishly didn't want her to leave this world. But after I saw how she suffered in the last months, I knew what a balance she must be holding for us all, and it was probably time to go. I'm so grateful to have known Ruth for a short time that I did. I think we must have known each other before, and I even had the privilege of having her as a teacher in this life, which must have been a present from Lynello. I will always remember her as a great teacher, a great lover of children, a great lady, and a great heart flame. Thank you, Ruth, for your example, and I'm so happy that you made it to heaven for All Saints' Day. And this is from Celeste Lasater. Ruth Farnam was my first department head, and we worked down in the mailroom where we opened mail, recording the donations, filled orders, and prepared the address labels for mailing. One other thing Ruth was in charge of was manning the radio which Mark would use to announce when he was returning to the property and when the gate should be open for him. Ruth was probably in her 60s at that time. She was a very careful worker and wrote with beautiful penmanship. She was able to interpret handwriting and often comment about the handwriting on envelopes. She was a wonderful and dedicated Sheila. If I remember correctly, she had been in the executor for Louis XIV in one life. At one point, she told us she had asked for all her karma to be returned to her as physical karma so she could get it over with. She said she never wanted to have pablum on her face again. Mark found out that she had asked for all her karma, and he scolded her for not telling him that she was doing that. The result was that several painful physical ailments which were chronic. One of them was that her kneecap would dislocate and she would be in extreme pain. I would have to go over and pull it back into place, a very nerve-wracking experience. Ruth was very good-natured and rarely complained, except about that radio that kept malfunctioning just when Mark was returning to the back gate. Ruth was the best teacher I ever observed in my life. Most of her life she was directress of an orphanage in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. She retired to the staff and would often tell me stories about running the orphanage. That seemed such a fantastic job to me in my early 20s. My secret fantasy was to be the directress of an orphanage too. Ruth taught music to the Montessori children, and believe me, there has never been a better teacher at MI in 25 years to my knowledge. When the children, ages 2.5 to 5, entered the music room, they would seat themselves on the chairs as quiet as mice. At the signal of a particular musical chord, they would get up and go and pick up a musical instrument of their choice, sit back down, and put the instrument under their chair. No talking, no goofing around. Then on the next chord, a different chord, they would reach down under their chairs and bring their instrument up to their laps with no extraneous noise with the instruments. Then, on the next chord, they would raise their instruments and prepare to play. Finally, on the fourth chord, they would begin to play the piece. The reverse process was repeated after the song to other musical chords. For 3 months before Christmas, the children would accompany the piano with their instruments, bells, sticks, triangles, shakers, etc. And then finally at Christmas, she would prepare the costumes to go with the various songs and put on a performance for the adults. I tell you, there was always total shock on the part of the parents that such young children could exhibit such poise, control, and grown-up behavior. I learned a lot about management from watching Ruth. She never once raised her voice and always had perfect control of the children. I never saw a child misbehave in her class, ever. And they all loved music. Had it not been for Ruth, I would never have believed that American children could be just as behaved as Oriental children. She was truly a master teacher, and I have described her skills to every university teacher training class I ever taught. I'm so happy she is now with Lynello. When I visited her in Livingston in August, she was in a coma and didn't recognize me. I could hardly recognize the Ruth that I remembered in the body that lay before me on the bed. I'm so happy she has returned to the masters that she loves, and I hope she balanced enough karma to take her ascension. And so we're glad she did. Thank you.
beloved mother, friends. I had the honor of knowing Ruth Farnam for a relatively short amount of time, over a year or so, and I found her to be very down-to-earth and caring. When I visited Ruth, I always felt the feeling that I was receiving more than I was giving. It was kind of her way to give and care, and in all her accounts that she would tell, it was always something that I seemed to pick up and receive as an uplift. She was very huggable. Right from the start, with Ruth, it was easy to be in her company. It was easy to receive a hug from her, and you just felt very comfortable. I saw Ruth as a teacher, example, guide, and friend. I appreciated her wise counsel and advice. Once I paid a visit to Ruth, and she wasn't there, so I left her a note. And as Kathleen has just explained, she had that talent of handwriting analysis. Well, on my next visit, she greeted me with her insights, and sure enough, she was very right on. So she told me a lot of things that I needed to work on. She had a sense of humor that was also giving and caring. I remember once Rose and I had visited her, and we were talking about the things that were happening in our lives, and I had mentioned to her that I was kind of flustered. I was, in a few days, it was going to be my 40th birthday, and I wasn't able to, I was kind of had a hard time dealing with this. So she smiled, and from her perspective of someone in the 90s, she said something like, "Oh yeah, that's real old." I'd like to share with you one of the cards that I received from Ruth. On the cover is the 2 stickers. There are 2 teddy bears and dressed in tutus, doing a little ballet. In fact, they kind of remind me of her. It's a thank you note. Dear friends, this is to my wife and myself. She thanked Franz for sending her cuttings for a plant and soil. She said they were doing very nicely. And this is also, my wife plays cello. She says, interesting to learn you play the cello. I played in the college orchestra years ago, cello, and slide trombone and tenor horn in the band. Graduated in 1925, double exclamation points. Time flies, triple exclamation points. Lovingly, Ruth. After a visit, her goodbyes were always special to me. She would smile, look up and say, "Love ya." So to my dear friend Ruth and mentor, I thank you for your wise counsel, guidance, caring and kindness, and friendship. It's a true honor to have known you and shared some precious time with you. God speed you in your victory. Love ya.
Ruth Edna Farnam was born on August 4th, 1904, at 50 Dunbar Street in Keene, New Hampshire, to Fred Earl and Adela Caswell Holbrook. In her memoirs, she describes her mother as a staunch Baptist who was the dominant of her 2 parents. Her father, a quiet man, owned the only steam laundry in town and was a tireless worker. Ruth said her mother never postponed chastisement and immediate discipline, which she considered a blessing. She had one brother who became a minister, the Reverend Clyde A. Holbrook. She is survived by one sister, Mrs. Madge Burke. In her memoirs, Ruth writes, "I remember my birth and would like to visit the house on Dunbar Street in Keene, New Hampshire, to verify my first peek at terra firma in this incarnation. I recall a fireplace in the room, and then it seemed a curtain dropped on my consciousness until the age of 3. Mama named me Ruth, and Papa added Edna, which Mama was sure was a former girlfriend. It seems one day during an outing, Mama and I encountered a Catholic priest. He stopped Mama to ask her if I had been christened. She explained she didn't believe in it until years of understanding. At that point, the priest pulled out a container of holy water and blessed me then and there." In her memoirs, Ruth writes in detail of her upbringing and schooling. She tells wonderful stories of the lessons she learned as a child, along with her perspective on those lessons now. One story she titles, "A Lesson in Justice." A very sweet girl named Gladys was a classmate. To me, her clothes looked shabby as I compared them with mine. I made a remark about them which was overheard by Gladys. That afternoon, her mother came over to our house to talk with my mama. As they stood at the front door, I hid behind portieres in the parlor and listened. "Mrs. Holbrook," Gladys' mother began, "I know we're poor and can't afford clothes like the ones Ruth wears, but we are good people." And Gladys was terribly hurt by what Ruth said about her dress. I scurried to another part of the house and listened no more. I knew I had done Gladys an injustice. I really hadn't meant it to be so serious. Then I decided to let her know how much I really liked her. I must make up for what I had said. It made a deep impression on my consciousness. Why can't I keep my big mouth shut? I kept asking myself, I don't want to hurt anyone again. The lesson that silence is golden was not yet learned. She tells another touching story of an incident that occurred when she was 9 years old. Papa enjoyed taking us to Springfield, Massachusetts, for what we called a plank steak dinner. The steak was very large and served on a board, a plank. One night, as we were returning home, the car lights went out. Papa knew the road well, as it was quite straight, and he felt he could finish the trip in the dark. Suddenly, he said he felt something was wrong. It was as though someone told him to stop. He got out of the car to make sure we were on the road. To his horror, we were just 1 foot from the edge of the Connecticut River. Had he not heeded the inner voice, this story could not have been told, as not one of us was able to swim. At age 11, she tells a story of titles. The goal looms bright. School was my life and joy. While in the 7th grade, I became more and more determined to be a teacher. After the usual morning prayer and salute to the flag, I listened eagerly to the stories our teacher read from the book, The Pot of Gold. Each week, a penmanship teacher came to teach a new method of writing, called the Palmer Method. Up to this time, my penmanship was a clear block type. Mama thought it was very pretty, one of my efforts she approved. The new method looked entirely different. Everyone in the class was encouraged to copy the Palmer book to earn a prize pin. That was a definite challenge. I used reams of paper to perfect each page. Night after night, I spent hours in practicing the push and pulls and the circular exercises. We had no ballpoint pens, and it had to be accomplished with pens dipped into an ink bottle hundreds of times. When the prize pins were presented, I not only received the pin, but also a teacher's certificate. Hard work and constancy had won out. Oh, the satisfaction of achieving a degree of perfection. My goal was now very plain. I would become a penmanship teacher. How many incarnations ago I was a teacher of writing in China, I did not realize at the time. It was a definite carryover that was revealed years later by Mark Prophet. Ruth was in high school during World War I. She relates a story that well reflects the atmosphere in the United States during that period. At school, we were urged to donate toothpaste, toothbrushes, shaving cream, razor blades, washcloths, anything a soldier was supposed to need. Anyone who could knit made khaki sweaters and socks to send them to men on the front lines. The children in my class were taught the simple steps of knitting, and each of us produced a washcloth made of string. We brought old sheets to school, tore them up into strips, which we wound on hand-cranked rollers to produce bandages. We were all involved. Sometimes Madge, Clyde, and I went to a spot near home where we watched the long train loads of soldiers being shipped to New York City for transportation to Europe. We would wave to the boys, soldiers, and I can remember the sight of hundreds of arms waving back from the train windows in return. Many were waving their final farewell to the United States for that incarnation. Ruth finished high school in 1922 and attended Keene State College from 1922 to 1925. Her major field of study was a music supervisory course from which she earned her teacher's certificate. She was valedictorian of her class. She took continuing education courses at Smith College 3 consecutive summers, 1926 to 1928, to study music pedagogy. She taught music at Danbury State College, Hartford, Connecticut for 7 years, and then at Sand Springs Children's Orphanage near Tulsa, Oklahoma. During this time, Ruth dated Bob, a young man whom her mother didn't like. She tells the following story of how she dealt with his proposal of marriage. Quote, "The night before I left to go back to Danbury, we took a long walk along the esplanade. Bob was in a very dejected mood. I was unable to rouse him from the doldrums. Try as I might, he remained in a very negative mood. When I returned to my room on Beacon Hill, his sense of gloom weighed heavily on my mind. I dropped to my knees beside the bed. Oh, Father, what should I do? I have failed to cheer him. I cannot seem to make him happy. When he was at the farm, he mentioned how cruel nature is, and all I could see is beauty. And what is this something in religion that he talks about as humanism? Somehow he seems to be using the pulpit for his own ego and not for Christ. Oh God, please help me." Weeping bitterly, I prayed the whole night through. The answer finally came: break the engagement for at least a year. Ruth was obedient to this instruction, and during that year she met Matthew Farnam, who was to be her husband. She married him 2 years later on August 1, 1930, when she was 25 years old. They had 2 sons, Jack and Thomas. Her husband made his transition while they were living in Washington, D.C. in December of 1945 at the age of 47. He had been ill in a D.C. Veterans Hospital for a couple of years. She writes, "Alone in the big city without friends, working to support my family of 2 boys, 7 and 11 years of age, I decided to look through a magazine of a national organization we belonged to and find some lady with whom I could converse on mutual topics of spiritual value. Checking through the list of officers, I liked the name Crystal Anderson and decided to call her. A lively little Aquarian, she became a very close friend to this Leo. She told me of this young man who was going to do wonders for the world. His name was Mark Prophet. Mark Prophet not only had the answers, but a great spiritual understanding of God's Word. He also had the contact with the Ascended Masters. Now I could get the knowledge I was seeking. During the 50s, Mark guided many of us by the precious ashram notes, special rituals for developing our service to the light. Each ashram was to have 7 members if possible and serve as a prayer group. I like to think of them all over the nation as little candles of God, dedicated as a beginning to enlighten the world, as Crystal had told me Mark was to do. Because Ruth was the guardian of the ashram notes, I was able to print them after Mark's passing. The first time Ruth met Mark was when he came to stay at her cottage in Sand Springs. She tells the following story. Now it must be remembered that up to this time I had only seen a picture of Mark taken during his high school days. One of the first questions he asked me was, "What do you think of me?" It really was a similar question that Jesus asked his disciples, "Whom say you that I am?" Of course, the final answer came from Peter, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." After all the years of working with Mark and knowing his great spiritual devotion, I should have sensed the deeper meaning of his question. I admit to the density of the human mind that blinds the spiritual. I shall never forget his look of complete disappointment of my assessment of him when I answered, "I'm surprised you have some gray hair." Why, oh why, did my human take over when my soul knew he was the appointed messenger of this age? In November of 1965, Ruth phoned Mark and me to tell us she was retiring as supervisor of the Sand Springs home after 20 years' service with children. The Summit Lighthouse had just purchased La Tourelle in Colorado Springs, and Mark and I invited her to join staff there. On January 2nd, 1966, she arrived at La Tourelle in Colorado Springs. I was there, but some days passed before Mark, baby Sean, Alexander Reichart, Anita Buchanan, Thomas Miller, and others arrived. One day when Ruth was eating dinner with Mark and I, we both pointed to her and said at the same time, she was a Quaker. As you know, Quakers often worship in silence without a minister or spoken prayer. That explained why at the first conference Ruth had absented herself from every decree session possible because she didn't like speaking aloud. So she arranged to visit the art museum, the wax museum, anything to avoid the decree sessions. In the spring of 1977, I invited Ruth to attend Summit University. In a letter written to Ruth, I asked her, has anyone told you that you are worthy to make your ascension? Has anyone told you that you can do just that in this life? Ruth must have believed me. Ruth must have believed she could ascend, for early on she wrote, the start to overcome the world problems, I believe, rests with each individual. Therein lies the key. Only by mastery of the self can mankind eventually, as a whole, rise and find the divine goal of life and the means of achieving it. Ruth stayed at La Tourelle in Colorado Springs until it was sold in 1983. She then moved to a retirement home nearby. While there, she stayed in touch with other keepers of the flame. Stump teams and book salesmen enjoyed visiting her when they went through Colorado Springs. In late 1989, just before the shelter cycle, I invited Ruth to come to the ranch. Antonio and Almarinda Diaz, keepers of the flame who were living in Glastonbury, graciously volunteered to drive to Colorado Springs and bring Ruth and her belongings to Glastonbury. Ruth lived in Golden Age Village and the Livingston Convalescent Center until her transition on Thursday, October 31, 1996. I am profoundly grateful for the wondrous example Ruth provided for each of us in how to be victorious over our karmic circumstances. She never lost sight of her goal, the Ascension, and she has well documented her path in 8 binders that comprise her autobiography. We must publish this autobiography soon. I have many things I could tell you about Ruth Farnam, but I will be brief. As I was thinking about what all of you were saying and testifying to, I remembered so many, many precious moments with Ruth. Her car, which no one understood, never stopped working for her, always worked for her forever. I believe she called that car Bessie, am I correct? Betsy, right. And she'd get in that car, and it was somewhat like our Ruth Bolton's car. It was, I'm not sure whose car was running better, but the amazing thing about it is both their cars run and have been running for years and years and years. But she liked to get out and about after the mail work was done, and she had a very good balance to her life. She had a very great camaraderie with Mark. I remember meeting her for the first time when Mark and I and Sean visited her in 1964. And it was an all-day visit, and mostly it was Mark and Ruth Farnam talking about old times, talking about everything under the sun. And Ruth Farnam loves to tell this story. She's told it many times, that we were there all day from morning to night, and she didn't serve us anything to eat or drink. And she had this entire meal prepared in the refrigerator of steak and salad and all the trimmings. And it came to the end of the evening, and she still forgot that she had food for us. So we went on our way, and I didn't make mention of it. So, over the years, of course, I have understood the great wisdom of Ruth. I have seen her evolution. I have seen her work through her substance. I remember the very day when these two sisters left because it was my birthday. And Ruth was there. And as it has been said this evening, Mark chastened her, and lawfully so, and she accepted it. But these two had not worked through their pride, and they considered that act done by Mark to her was the last straw. So they did pack their bags and they did leave. And so it was an interesting lesson for all of us. Earlier than the last few days, I think it was probably about a month ago, Ruth Farnam had a stroke, and we thought that she was not going to live for very long. And so it was in the morning, about 8 o'clock, and I had them put me on the phone with her, and I talked with her and prayed with her for about an hour, with her listening, and I could tell by her breathing that she was hearing me, that she was listening, and I was talking about the glories of her path, the great rejoicing in heaven, in the hour of her transition, and I spoke to her of my gratitude for all that she had ever done for me as a great mother figure in my life. My heart is always filled with joy as well as deep pain and sorrow at the passing of loved ones, even though I know they are going to their ascension in the light. I had the experience on Halloween, thanks to a staff member. I was in my house, and this staff member called and said, what's in the sky? It looks like, two doors that are in the sky. And then the other appearance was of a pyramid. And just in that half hour before I received that phone call, I was seeing Ruth in front of me very strongly, very powerfully. In fact, she was so strong that she was in the very room. And so I explained to the staff member that the doors that were opening were the doors to heaven that she would be entering, and that the pyramid structure was the interior initiation within the pyramid of the Great White Brotherhood of the ritual of the Ascension. So as soon as I understood that vision, I went to the altar and made all the calls that I make for those who are making their transition. And I have felt the great joy of Ruth's presence, but the immediate vignette that came to me just before what I've told you was the distinct vision standing before me as though physical. Mark was all dressed up in his white suit, white shoes, white socks, and he had on a blue shirt and a tie with a little darker blue. And he was way up high, and he was watching Ruth transcending herself and going through the process that it takes. It can take 3.5 days, it can take longer, it depends on the individual. But I'm certain with Ruth Farnam, it will not be long. So we have begun the celebration proceedings of her ascension, and let us keep that flame and tend it through the days and the night. And will you please keep this vision of temple doors that will open one day for you, of a pyramid where you will go to experience your ultimate initiations, whereby your soul in your holy Christ self attains union with your mighty I Am presence. And you know that experience of regaining your immortality that you lost a long, long time ago. Keep that image before you. It's a very important image. Look up to it, think about it, ask to be taken through those doors when it is time. And remember that we all have the day when we will hear the clarion call. And what is most important is that we know that when that call comes, not only are we ready, but that we have fought the good fight. We have won, as Ruth Farnam has won. as the saints have won. We don't want to get to that moment when our timetable says, now is the moment of your ascension, and then we have to say, but I haven't finished everything I wanted to do. So decide now, what are the most important things that you want to have done by the time the hour of your ascension draws nigh? Make sure that you do them now, sooner than later. Let us conclude then our service. Let us recite the I Am Lord's Prayer with Jesus. Please stand. Turn to 116 and 117. Together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I am thy kingdom come. I am thy will being done. I am on earth even as I am in heaven. I am giving this day daily bread to all. I am forgiving all life this day, even as I am also all life forgiving me. I am leading all men away from temptation. I am delivering all men from every evil condition. I am the kingdom, I am the power, and I am the glory of God in eternal, immortal manifestation. All this I am. I have mentioned to you most recently that when we sing number 116, Jesus Christ is risen, we are celebrating the rising of the Christ within our temple and the acceleration of our soul from the seat of the soul chakra to the secret chamber of the heart. Please then experience a very strong visualization of Jesus Christ and your Holy Christ self intensifying in your temple and drawing the soul to her native place. Her native place is the secret chamber of the heart. But because she fell from grace, that soul resides in the seat of the soul chakra. So our goal is to get to that very heart of hearts of our Lord and Savior. We do it through Jesus now and through the precious heart of our beloved Ruth Farnam. Please make your calls and remember whenever we sing, when there are interludes, you need not an invitation to give fiats. Page 116.
Behold the thunder and the lightning.
Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. And whither I go ye know, and the way ye know. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Let us sing the song that is written for Lady Kristine, in which we claim the mantle. Let us claim the mantle of our beloved Ruth Farnam, the mantle of her Holy Christ self in all incarnations since she stepped on earth. We have the song number 523. Please claim the mantle of the I Am Presence of the Ascended Lady Master, Ruth Edna Farnam. Claim the mantle of your own I Am Presence and Holy Christ Self.
Victory.